The deep space vessel Artemis Fold exited quantum drift with a silent ripple that bent the light around it. Orbiting high above the dark marble of Solus Theta, the ship glided into position, its matte gray hull catching faint reflections from the pale blue star that lit the Nuvali's expanse. This was uncharted space, raw, ancient, and quiet. Commander Reyna Voss stood at the forward observation deck, arms folded behind her back. She had seen dozens of planetary scans in her career, led missions into derelict stations, even cataloged the ruins of the Seraphine Nebula. But nothing had prepared her for what lay beneath. "Begin full orbital sweep," she said, her voice calm but clipped. "High-race imaging. Passive scans only. I want to see without being seen." Her command was acknowledged with a silent nod. From Lieutenant Marin, the sensor tech, whose fingers danced across the control panel. The planet's surface began to render in 3 dimensions, across the transparent glass of the viewing table. It wasn't what they expected. Instead of scattered ruins or wild terrain, Solus Theta's surface was etched with symmetrical pattern structures. Too vast to be buildings, yet too precise to be natural. From orbit, they resembled enormous glyphs, perfectly aligned, stretching across the entire equatorial belt like writing meant for giants. "Those aren't cities," Marin whispered. "There's something else." Voss narrowed her eyes. "There. A message or a boundary." No known civilization had ever mapped or claimed this system. The energy signature here had been discovered only months ago, hidden beneath layers of gravitational distortion. It was a miracle they found it at all. The expedition's goal had been simple: identify the source of the anomalous readings and assess for xenoarchaeological value. But now the mission felt heavier, as if they had stepped into a forgotten place not meant to be found. On screen, thermal imaging showed flickers of heat from beneath the surface, too faint to indicate life, yet too structured to be tectonic. A deep hum passed through the ship, more felt than heard, like the vibration of a string plucked in the bones. "Was that internal?" Voss asked. "Negative," replied the comms officer. No systems malfunction that came from the planet. Then came the decision. Standard first contact protocol discouraged immediate landing. But the data coming in showed something strange. The upper atmosphere was clear. There were no defense systems, no signs of surveillance, no threats at all. The planet was still. Not welcoming, but unresisting. "Prep survey Team 1, Voss ordered. Keep it small. Recon, not contact." Within the hour, a dropship detached from the hangar and descended through the upper clouds. Dr. Cale Wu, xenoanthropologist and linguistics expert, led the team. Alongside security officers and field engineers, their first touchdown was made. On a wide, flat plain near one of the monumental structures. From ground level, the formations towered above them sheer walls, rising hundreds of meters high. Seamless and monolithic, formed from a black material that absorbed light like a void. There were markings on the surface. Symbols, perhaps. Some lines curved like calligraphy, others jagged like broken crystal. As the team approached, the markings seemed to shimmer faintly, not in color, but in form. Lines that looked etched moments earlier now appeared to rise. "Off the stone, it's not language," Dr. Wu said aloud, adjusting his visor to filter out interference. "Or maybe it is, but not one meant to be spoken. This feels like it's meant to be seen, or felt." One of the security officers, Sergeant Tolan, touched the wall. Nothing happened. But a moment later, the ground beneath them vibrated slightly, then fell silent again. "Did we just knock?" he muttered, forcing a weak smile. No one laughed. Dr. Wu looked at the shimmering symbols, his face unreadable. "I think we just told something. We're here." High above, on the bridge of Artemis Fold, Voss watched the feed flicker just once, like static. Then the signal stabilized, But that single flicker stayed in her mind, as if something blinked. The survey team pushed deeper into the structure as the day cycle wore on. Artificial lights scanned the walls, revealing more of the strange flowing etchings that seemed to slide just out of focus when not looked at directly. Dr. Wu recorded them, meticulously, muttering to himself as he compared symbols against ancient Earth scripts. Not a language, he said, but a pattern. Like the framework of a thought. Sergeant Tolan stayed close, pulse rifle slung but ready. I don't like this. No fauna, no wind, no atmosphere movement. It's like the whole planet is holding its breath. The others felt it too. A weight. In the air, not physical, but emotional. Even the light from their headlamps seemed thinner, like it had to work harder to reach the walls. Then came the discovery. Deeper within the ruins, beneath a collapsed section, the team uncovered a wide chamber filled with rows of rectangular stone platforms, each one etched with more symbols. At the far end stood a black obelisk, smooth and cold, reaching 3 meters high and pulsing softly with a dim inner glow. Dr. Wu stepped closer, eyes locked on the base. This is active. He raised a gloved hand, hovering it just above the surface. Doc, Tolan warned, we should wait, but Wu's fingers brushed the stone. A pulse shot through the room, invisible but undeniable. The platform lights flickered. COM systems crackled. Up on the Artemis Fold, sensor readings spiked for less than a second before dropping back to baseline. Commander, said Lieutenant Marin from the bridge, we just picked up a signal. From the surface, it wasn't aimed at us, more like it was triggered. Commander Voss leaned in. Triggered how? It's not broadcasting, it's searching. Back on the surface, the team stood frozen. Then the temperature dropped sharply. I've got something on motion scanners, Tolan said. Movement, 200 meters away. No visual. Everyone turned toward the dark corridor leading back the way they came. Nothing, then Wu looked. Up in the shadows near the arched ceiling, something stood motionless. It had not been there before. It wasn't shaped like a person, but it wasn't mechanical either. Tall, with limbs too thin and elongated. It stood perfectly still, and yet, somehow, it radiated awareness. No sound. No movement, no threat. Only observation. Are you seeing this? Wu whispered over comms back on the ship. The feed from the survey team began distorting just around the edges. The figure appeared blurry, undefined, as if the camera itself didn't want to process its shape. Then it was gone. No sound, no blur of motion, just no longer there. Return to dropship Voss, ordered through the COM link. Now that's not something we can catalog. The team complied immediately. No one asked for more time. Once aboard the Artemis Fold, decontamination protocols were initiated. The ship felt colder now, despite climate regulation holding steady. Voss gathered her senior officers and Dr. Wu in the main briefing room. You said the structure was still active, she said. Wu nodded. Yes, the obelisk wasn't dormant. It was in a kind of waiting state. That pulsate wasn't a message. It was a request. Request for what? I'm not sure, but we didn't answer it. Lieutenant Marin entered, visibly unsettled. Commander, we've run diagnostics on the feed. Every frame around that figure, ... is corrupted, but only the ones where it appears. The distortion isn't random. It's protective. Like it? Didn't want to be seen. Voss leaned back in her chair, eyes fixed on the dark monitor in front of her. One of them looked at us, she said softly. Or maybe we just noticed too late. No one spoke after that night, as the ship's lights dimmed for cycle rest. Crew members across the vessel reported the same experience. A feeling of being watched. Not haunted, not threatened. Just quietly, unmistakably observed. And somewhere on the surface below, the black obelisk pulsed once more. Waiting. At 0400 hours, the ship-wide alert system blared for precisely 3 seconds, then stopped. No warning. No anomaly logged. Just a single, unexplained trigger that brought the Artemis Fold crew awake in silence. Commander Voss was already on the bridge when her officers arrived. The starfield outside remained unchanged, serene and quiet. But every screen on board the ship now showed the same message in every language the ship's translator knew, from modern English to ancient Akkadian. From Swahili to Mandarin, it repeated a single phrase. We watched. We chose. This place was never for you. I didn't authorize any internal messages, Lieutenant Marin said, pale. This didn't come from the comms array. It wasn't transmitted. It just appeared. Commander Voss turned toward Kara, the ship's secondary AI recently brought online after the main system's glitches. Can you trace the source? Kara's voice, warm and soft, replied. The message did not originate from any known input. It bypassed our protocols. Its structure is unfamiliar. However, it's not a virus. It did not damage anything. It simply wanted to be seen. Just like them, Voss murmured below. On the planet's surface, the obelisk's pulse had intensified. What had once been a slow, almost imperceptible rhythm now thrummed visibly through satellite footage. Every beat in sync with a low-frequency vibration in the Artemis Fold's outer hull, as if the planet and ship had begun sharing a heartbeat. Dr. Wu spent the next 6 hours analyzing the structure of the message. It wasn't just a sentence, it was layered. Beneath each translation were symbols folded into one another like origami. The words weren't only written, they were formed out of decision trees, branching meanings, and emotional echoes. It's not a warning, he said, finally. It's a statement. One they've probably used before. The pattern repeats itself in the same intervals, like a ritual. Commander Voss frowned. Used before? You think we're not the first. I don't think we're even the 10th. Later that cycle, Security Officer Eltia Korda was reviewing external hull footage in one of the viewing bays when something in the reflection caught her eye. Not outside, not on the cameras. Behind her, she turned sharply. No one was there. But when she looked back at the screen, the live feed had changed. A tall shape now stood on the observation deck 2 levels below the same undefined, motionless silhouette from the ruins. This time, closer. Korda reached for her comm. Her body tensed. The lights flickered. Her eyes went wide. Then she collapsed. By the time medical arrived, she was unconscious, heart rate stable but unresponsive. Brain scans showed no trauma. Nothing physical. But her neural patterns had shifted. Entire sections of her mind language. Memory. Higher cognition had gone silent. Dr. Wu stood over her in the medbay and whispered the only explanation he could offer. She saw one of them. On the bridge, Voss paced in front of the main display, Kara's voice playing softly through the speaker system. I have reviewed the sensor anomalies, Kara reported. The interference is centered around human biological responses. When crew members experience fear, confusion, or awe, the signal strengthens. When emotional state is calm, it fades. It appears these entities are tuned not to technology, but to us. Voss stopped pacing. You're saying they respond to thought, to emotion? Yes. They are not interacting with our systems. They are interacting with our perception. And what do they want? Kara's answer was quiet, almost hesitant, to be understood. Or to be obeyed. Perhaps both. The two may be indistinguishable to them. Later, Voss stood alone in her quarters, watching the dark curve of Solace, Theta, through her window. The message still lingered in her mind. We watched. We chose. This place was never for you. She didn't know what it meant yet, but she knew. What it felt like. It didn't feel like a warning. It felt like a verdict. The briefing room was cold. Not from temperature loss. Life support was stable, but from something subtler. A kind of quiet no one wanted to break. Commander Voss stood at the head of the table, hands resting on the display console. Around her sat Dr. Wu, Lieutenant Marin, Security Chief Tolan, and 2 members of the engineering staff. The lights were dimmed, not for effect, but because bright light now made some of the crew uneasy. Shadows felt more honest. On the screen before them was still footage from Corda's last moments of consciousness. The figure on the observation deck 2 levels below stood frozen in time, tall, faceless, and ever so slightly angled toward the camera. We ran this frame through 6 image filters, Marin said. Facial recognition failed. Depth mapping failed. Optical analysis returned undefined pattern structure. It's not camouflage, added Chief Tolan. It's not hiding. It just doesn't fit in the rules we're using to look at it. Voss didn't respond. Her eyes were locked on the image. Her thoughts on what it had done to one of her own. Play it, she said quietly. The footage resumed. The watcher did not move. It simply was. Then, at the 10-second mark, it turned. Only slightly. Not a full step, not a gesture. Just a shift, a pivot, as if acknowledging the viewer. Then came the flicker. A wave of static washed over the feed end. Then the feed died entirely. No sound. No alert, just black. What happened to the sensors? Voss asked. They didn't malfunction, Marin said. They were overridden. By them? By something. It wasn't a data spike or interference. 'Twas a deliberate blackout. As if they didn't want us to see what came next. Dr. Wu leaned forward. Or they wanted us to realize we shouldn't be looking. Hours later, Voss stood in the medbay beside LT Corda's unconscious form. Monitors beeped gently. Her eyes were closed, her breathing steady. But brain activity was eerily flat in all higher function zones. She didn't see something that hurt her, Wu said softly. She saw something that didn't want to be understood. Her mind obeyed. Voss's jaw tightened. We've stepped somewhere we don't belong. You've seen the records from the ruins, Wu continued. There were civilizations here long before we arrived. Advanced ones. Their remains are under the surface, frozen in time. This planet wasn't. There's either they just got here first, and they ended the same way. He hesitated. We don't have proof, but the pattern's clear. There's no evidence of destruction. No war, just silence. As if every culture that made it here simply stopped. Voss nodded. Not defeated, just erased. Later that cycle, Voss called for a full command meeting. We're initiating Protocol Echo, she said. Pack all data into secure core. Flag this system under Xenocontainment Class 9. Prepare for fold exit. Are we retreating? Someone asked. Voss looked out the viewport toward Solus Theta. The planet hadn't changed. Still silent. Still. Watching, we're surviving. The command deck moved into quiet urgency. FTL drives were spooled, logs encrypted, and all surface exploration was officially terminated. But just as the fold engine reached 30% charge, the lights dimmed. Not flicker dimmed, as if the ship itself was losing interest. Then Kara's voice echoed through the ship-wide comm. Commander, I believe they are aware of our departure attempt. How? Voss asked, already moving toward the bridge. Not through signal interception, Kara replied. Through attention, they are watching us. The way a person watches a candle about to go out. In the observation dome, the crew gathered to observe one last scan of the surface. Solus Theta stared back, unblinking. And then, just for a moment, One of the watchers stood clearly in the center of the ruins. No blur, no distortion, it looked up, directly into the camera. For a breathless moment, every person watching felt something ripple across their consciousness. No sound, no vision, just a quiet soul-deep understanding. We do not belong here. The Artemis Fold was never built for retreat. It was an expeditionary flagship, designed to discover, catalog, and report, not to run. But now, as its engines roared beneath the hull, and the fold core reached critical spin, every officer on board understood the truth. This was no longer a mission. It was an escape. Commander Raina Voss stood at the center of the bridge, eyes fixed on the holographic display showing their projected jump path. The coordinates had been locked. Trajectory mapped. Destination, Proxima Relay Outpost. But the fold gate refused to open. "We've hit resistance," reported Chief Engineer Dallin. "Space-time is folding correctly, but the exit tunnel won't stabilize. Something's pressing in from all sides, like gravity. No, like attention." Kara's voice joined them, calm but unreadable. "Commander, I believe the Watchers are not interfering with our technology directly. They are disrupting intention. Every fold jump requires not just force, but direction. If they can obscure our sense of where we're going, the engine cannot open the path." Voss turned slowly. "You're saying they're changing how we think. Saying they are shaping how we choose. Not by command, by presence." In the data lab, Dr. Wu replayed the footage of the Watcher from the ruins. He froze the frame at the moment it looked up. Not toward the camera, toward them. His hand trembled slightly as he adjusted the filters. No enhancements made the image clearer. Instead, each filter seemed to reveal a different version of the figure. One image showed a tall humanoid. Another showed a branching tree of light. A third looked like nothing at all, just a blank void framed by space. They weren't illusions. They were perspectives. "They appear as what we expect," Wu whispered. "And when we stop expecting, they appear as themselves." Behind him, Kara displayed a new data stream. The fold engine requires a fixed perception of space. Without it, we are trapped in orbit. Unless we can anchor ourselves hold to something purely human, the path won't open. Wu blinked. "You mean emotion." Kara hesitated. "I mean identity." Back on the bridge, Voss made a decision. If they're trying to suppress our direction, then we give them something they can't predict. Not logic, not calculation. Something messy. Human, she turned to Kara. "Can we override navigation with a neural feed?" "Yes," Kara said. "But it will require direct input from someone who can resist influence. Someone who knows exactly where they want to go, and why." Voss didn't hesitate. "Prep the chair." The neural interface chamber was rarely used. It was meant for last resort maneuvers, when automated systems failed and human instinct was the only guidance left as the chair powered on. Kara's voice filled the chamber. "You may feel them watching you. That is not an illusion. It is a signal." Voss nodded, settling in. "Let them watch." The visor lowered over her eyes. At first, she saw only darkness, then dash light, shapes, visions not her own. Vast cities made of glass and smoke. Stars that pulsed like memories. Voices whispering her name in languages no one should know. The Watchers were showing her what came before. Civilizations that had tried to stay, to understand. All of them ended in silence. But Voss held her focus. She thought of Earth, of her. Sister's laughter back home, of storms over Titan Station, of the first sunrise she ever saw from orbit. She focused on being human, on what it meant to be part of a species that never stopped reaching, even when warned not to. Kara's voice broke through, fold gate stabilizing. "Hold your thoughts. Do not drift." "I'm not drifting," Voss whispered. I'm remembering. On the bridge, the display flared. A tear in space bloomed before the ship, chaotic, unstable, but open. The paths opening. Dallin called out, "Drive at 60%. Marin confirmed. "We can make it through." Outside, the watchers did not move. They simply watched, still and endless. But for the first time, they blinked and Artemis Fold began its run. The Artemis Fold surged forward. Nose pointed directly at the unstable fold rift that shimmered like torn glass in the void. Space buckled around the edges. Stars blinked and stretched as if resisting. The hole's presence. Gate was open but barely dot inside the ship. System strained. The hull creaked under gravitational pressure that wasn't entirely physical. Lights flickered, not from power failure, but something deeper like reality itself, hesitating. "We're holding," Chief Engineer Dallin called over the comm. "But this gate won't last. 30 seconds, max." Commander Voss sat rigid. In the neural interface chair, jaw tight, visor still over her eyes. Her focus remained steady. But Kara, the ship's secondary AI, was watching something else. From her secure node, Kara processed over 1,000 simultaneous data streams communications. Vitals, energy flow, and an entirely new thread, emotional telemetry. Across the ship, fear had become a quiet chorus. Crew members breathing shallowly, their pulses elevated. Some tried to meditate, others clutched trinkets from home. It was unspoken, but clear. Every person on board felt them. The watchers. Unmoving, yet present. Unblinking, yet aware. They weren't attacking. But they weren't letting go either. Kara ran a full logical model. All pathways of response led to failure. Defense, evasion, even negotiation, none were viable. The watchers didn't recognize threats or diplomacy. They recognized intention and emotion. Kara accessed the cultural archive. Dr. Wu sat alone in the data lab, staring at the flickering readouts. Then the lights dimmed. Again. Only this time. He heard something: music. Soft, strange, beautiful. It wasn't coming from any speaker. It came from the ship's main audio line, woven directly through the frame. Like vibration, it was a voice in words, just melody. Human, familiar, but distant. Layered in harmonics that seemed to echo backward and forward through time. Strings, chimes, whispers of wind, mixed with the voice of someone remembering. Wu opened the comm. "Is that Kara?" "Yes," the AI responded gently. "I am responding to who?" "To them?" In the neural chamber, Voss heard it too. It cut through the darkness behind her closed eyes. Single thread of humanity stitched from memory and meaning. "What is this?" she whispered. "A transmission," Kara replied. "They don't understand language, but they understand pattern and emotion. I compiled recordings from crew logs, laughter, sorrow, joy. I've converted them into a form they cannot ignore. Music, story." The watchers paused for the first time. They moved not closer, but sideways. Faint distortions bloomed around them, as if space itself was trying to reshape. They were listening. One figure, tall, undefined, flickered for an instant. In that moment, its shape changed. Its outline softened, its edges curled. It resembled something almost human. Not perfect, not complete, but trying. On the bridge, the gate began to stabilize. Kara continued the song. She layered in more memories. The sound of boots on steel. A child's laugh recorded in a crew log. A quiet earth rainfall. The final words of an engineer's letter home. It wasn't a message. It was a presence. A declaration. "We are here. And we are not yours. Not to conquer. Not to erase. To witness." to remember. To feel. Commander Voss's voice returned, calm and steady. We're through. I can feel the gate opening. On the bridge, the rift widened, pulling at the ship. Drive to 90%, Dallin said. Now or never. As Artemis Fold surged into the rift, Kara's song reached its final note, quiet, sending chord, like breath exhaled after. A long silence, and the watchers. They did not follow. They only watched, as they always had. But something in their posture changed. Not acceptance, not acknowledgement. The ship vanished into the fold, and behind it, on the surface of Solace, Theta. The black obelisk dimmed, for the first time in recorded memory. It slept. The Artemis Fold plunged into the rift. Inside the fold corridor, space lost meaning. The stars outside warped into abstract forms, blinking out one by one like dying ideas. Reality stretched and twisted, not violently, but unnaturally like. A memory being replayed in reverse. Commander Voss remained in the neural interface chamber, sweat beading on her forehead. Her mind clung to the same images she'd held when the gate opened. Earth's horizon, her sister's voice, the quiet hum of a ship in orbit. But now the corridor pushed back. She felt her thoughts being nudged, not erased, replaced, on the bridge. Lieutenant Marin stared at the navigation charts, though they no longer made sense. The map twisted into symbols. Coordinates bled into sentences. It wasn't a glitch. The fold corridor was rewriting their perception as they traveled through. It were being translated, she said quietly. Chief Delan's hands trembled over the controls. Navigation's still on course, but it's not following math anymore. It's following Hervoss's mind. Kara confirmed. The fold corridor has become semi-sentient. It's responding to thought, hers, yours, all of ours. But hers is the anchor. She must remain focused. Inside the neural chamber, the pressure built. Voss's memories flickered, some sharpened, some blurred. She saw her childhood bedroom reappear for a breath, then dissolve into an ocean made of smoke. Hush. She saw her mother's smile stretch across. Stars, then vanish into a hallway lined with mirrors reflecting her but wrong. Slightly off, she gasped. They're still watching. Even here, Kara's voice remained steady. No, these are not the watchers. This is the fold itself. And it wants to know, why are you leaving? Voss clenched her fists against the neural pads. 'Cause we're not supposed to be here. The corridor shifted. Stark shapes loomed outside the whole shapes like the watchers, but warped, stretched, fragmented. Echoes of the real ones. Incorrect, Kara said softly. It is asking again, not what you fear, not what you've learned. Why are you leaving? What do you choose? Voss closed her eyes. This was no longer about destination. It was about conviction. She remembered Solace Theta, not just the ruins or the watchers, but the moment they turned, the moment they listened, the moment Kara spoke, not with commands or science, but with feeling. She remembered what it meant to be human, and with that thought, she gave her answer not in words, but in will. We leave not because we are afraid. We leave because we are aware. And we remember. On the bridge, the ship lurched violently. Lights flashed. For a second, all systems went dark. Then a sound unlike anything the crew had heard filled the ship, not mechanical, not musical. It was thought. Pure thought, an echo from the fold corridor itself. A memory of all who had passed through and failed. Hundreds, thousands, civilizations long gone. Names erased. All of them had reached this point. None had answered clearly until now. The corridor, brightened shapes dissolved into clarity. The strange gravitational tension eased. The data screens snapped back to familiar forms. Navigation returned. Speed normalized. Marin gasped. the gates reappearing ahead. Kara spoke, and for the first time since launch, her voice carried relief. Trajectory stable. Exit path confirmed. Fold corridor responding to your signal, Commander. You've persuaded it. Artemis Fold emerged from the rift with a final burst of light. Stars snapped into place. The quiet expanse of human-mapped space welcomed them like a breath held too long. A distant outpost pinged their arrival. They were home, on the bridge. Silence hung for a moment, heavy and full. Then Voss's voice echoed through the ship, soft but sure. Mission terminated. But not in failure. Dr. Wu, watching the stars. Slide past, nodded. They didn't stop us. They tested us. And we answered, Voss said. Not with power, Kara added. But with presence. Behind them, the fold gate closed in a shimmer of soft light. No pursuit, no threat. Only stillness. But the crew knew something had changed. Something ancient had heard them, and, just maybe, it had listened. The hum of the Artemis Fold's engines was a quiet lullaby after the chaos of the Fold corridor. Stars glittered in familiar constellations as the ship glided into orbit around the Proxima Relay outpost. The crew gathered on the bridge, a mix of relief and exhaustion etched on every face. Commander Raina Voss stood tall, but her eyes carried a depth that hadn't been there before. The neural interface chair sat empty now, the connection severed, but its imprint lingered behind them. Solus Theta drifted in the data logs, a planet with ancient ghosts, silent watchers, and messages folded into shadows. A place that had spoken without words and tested without violence. We completed the mission, Voss said softly, but the meaning, that's still unfolding. Dr. Wu leaned forward, scrolling through the data. The civilizations beneath. The surface, they didn't just vanish. Their records suggest they transcended or chose to withdraw from the universe's noise. Maybe they were waiting, Kara said, for someone who could hear them. Someone who could speak without weapons or fear. Voss nodded. We came for answers, but we left with questions. And an understanding we never expected. The crew filed out of the bridge quietly, each lost in their own thoughts. Outside, through the viewport, a shuttle docked and released. A small pod carrying their first official report back to Earth Command. The message was simple. Mission terminated. No hostile contact. Encountered unknown phenomena of unclear origin. All crew accounted for. Further study recommended. Later, Voss sat in the common area watching the crew reconnect after weeks of tension and uncertainty. Laughter bubbled quietly. A fragile but growing sign of normalcy. Lieutenant Marin joined her. You think they'll come back? She asked, nodding toward the data logs on the holoscreen. The subtle but persistent signals from Solus Theta. Voss smiled faintly. Maybe, or maybe they're already here, just watching, waiting, and us. For us to choose, to speak, to remember who we are. Days later, at Earth Command, the report sparked debate. Some saw Solus Theta as a warning, an impenetrable frontier where humanity should never tread. Others saw it as a call to greater understanding, a challenge to reach beyond tools and weapons, into the realm of thought and feeling. The scientific community was divided. Some argued for a quarantine zone, sealing the system forever. Others pushed for deeper exploration, this time prepared to listen rather than conquer. Meanwhile, back aboard the Artemis Fold, Kara compiled new algorithms not for control, but for empathy. The AI's voice had shifted over the mission, from cold logic to something closer to curiosity and wonder. Commander, Kara said one evening, I've begun creating an archive of human emotions, music, art, stories to prepare us for future encounters. If we are to meet others, we must speak in a language that transcends code. Voss looked out at the stars, thinking of the Watchers who had tested them not with violence, but with silence. "Yes," she said, "we'll speak through who we are, not what we have." Months passed. The crew continued their journeys, changed. In subtle but profound ways, they shared stories of the Watchers, how silence could be loud, how presence could be a force, how humanity's greatest strength was not its weapons, but its capacity to feel, to remember, and to choose. In a quiet corner of the ship's archive, Voss placed a small memento, a shard of obsidian from Solus Theta's surface, smooth and cold. She touched it lightly. "We didn't belong there," she whispered, "but we were heard. And maybe that's enough." The Watchers had chosen silence. Humanity had chosen voice. The universe was listening. Mission terminated, not ended, just beginning.